Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining today's HPAC's Post-Baccalaureate Workshop. My name is Amber Nicholson. I'll be the facilitator of today's session. I'd like to get started by just addressing what a post-baccalaureate or post-bac is, what it means. It's a term that a lot of students are familiar with. They've heard of other students engaging in post-bacs, but maybe aren't entirely sure what it means or why somebody would take post-bac coursework. So at a kind of fundamental level, post-bac means coursework taken after completion of a student's undergraduate degree. And that seems really simple because that's really what post-bac means. Post stands for after, bac is just a shortened word of saying baccalaureate. So coursework taken after a student has completed their BA or their BS undergraduate degree. Now, students may be taking those courses for different reasons. There might be different courses that students are taking, but philosophically, post-bac just means after baccalaureate. Generally, we see there's two types of post-bac programs. They're what we call career changers, and then there's a different type called academic record enhancers, sometimes abbreviated as AREs. Career changers are designed for students who have not taken any of the science coursework required for doctorate level professional programs, whereas academic record enhancers are designed for students who have taken the course prerequisites for their intended professional program, but their GPA is not currently competitive and would need to be polished in terms of being competitive for their specific program. There's a couple different ways to enroll through post-bac courses or to take post-baccalaureate coursework. The first one being formal programs or certificate programs that students are most familiar with, and we'll look at a database of where to search for those programs. A comparable option to a formal or certificate program is doing what we call an informal option, which is enrolling in coursework through a university's open university or extension center or extended studies. At the UC system, we use the language extension center, where at the Cal State system, they generally use the language open university. These are ways for non-full-time, non-degree seeking students or community members to take coursework at a specific university without being an admitted full-time degree seeking student. So enrolling through open university or extension center courses might be likened to being a visiting student. Some people may use that language. We're going to talk more about these, but just to give you some general idea, formal programs versus informal programs. There's also special master's granting programs that students have heard of. And then oftentimes we get asked, can I go to a community college? Which might not be as readily available if you're thinking of a career in medicine or dentistry. So again, very generally, what are those different enrollment options? How do you know if a post-bac is right for you? Again, the career changer programs, those are usually designed for somebody who has a BA or a BS degree. They have an undergraduate degree, but it's not in a field that's related to their profession. So they were an art history major and didn't take any math or science courses at their time at UC Riverside, and has now decided they would like to be a physical therapist and now needs to take the science prerequisites required for physical therapy. We call that a career changer. A lot of you might be the second option, where you do have a BA or a BS degree that is related to your field. So let's say you want to go to dental school and you have a degree in biology, or you want to go to pharmacy school and you have a degree in biochemistry. Your grades are good, you've met your prerequisites, but unfortunately your GPA isn't high enough to be considered competitive for admissions, and so you might need to take some additional coursework prior to applying. Again, that might be a formal program, an informal program, a special master's program, but those are what we call the record enhancers or the academic record enhancers, which is different than a career changer. And then lastly, some of you also might have a degree related to your health profession. Again, let's say you got a science degree, but you want to be a physician assistant. Well, UC Riverside doesn't teach a full year of human anatomy and human physiology, which is a requirement for a program like physician assistant. And so perhaps you need to go and do an informal program to complete just that missing prerequisite coursework that you need. So you have a science degree, you have really great grades, but maybe you're just missing a course that you need for admissions. These are generally the 3 different reasons that we see students doing post-baccalaureate coursework, with the most common reason being the second, where the student does have a degree in the sciences, their GPA needs polishing prior to applying, and so they're looking at doing what we call an academic record enhancer post-bac coursework. Circling back around to those enrollment options, I promised we would talk a little bit more about those different types of enrollment options, and particularly trying to identify the route that would be best for you. There really isn't the perfect best option when looking at post-baccalaureate pathways. It's more about identifying a pathway that's going to be well suited for yourself. And that's going to be dependent upon the profession you're looking to pursue, the application you're prepared to submit, the grades that you're working with, and most likely your financial status. So if we look at first the formal post-baccalaureate programs, these are generally geared towards pre-med students. There are some pre-health post-bac programs, but most of them are really geared towards students wanting to pursue MD or DO programs. These types of formal programs are offered at undergraduate institutions. So not every 4-year university offers these types of formal post-bac programs, but some 4-year universities, which could be a UC school, a CSU school, or even a private college, will allow students to take undergraduate courses, again, for the purpose of perhaps raising their grades if they're an academic record enhancer student, or they would be taking the lower division prerequisite courses if they were a career changer student. These types of formal programs do have an application required, which means you have to pay an application fee. You have to write letters of, you have to write essays, you have to secure letters of recommendation, you might have to do interviews, there will definitely be deadlines to which you need to apply. So there is a kind of formal process that goes along with applying to academic record enhancer or career changer formal post-bac programs, where in comparison to the informal options, which would be a student going to any 4-year university, so any UC school, any private school, any CSU school, you're attending that institution as a visiting student through their open university or extension center, and you are taking the courses that you need for admissions to your professional program. So this is more of an a la carte option or a visiting option that would be open to any student pursuing any health professions program, and it would not have an application requirement. So there's a lot of similarities with formal programs and informal programs. A main one being that the formal program does have an application requirement, where informal options, any student can enroll through an open university at a different institution. So there isn't an application that's required. Whether a student does a formal option or an informal option, no degree is awarded. Some programs might say the word program or certificate, and that may be an incentive for you to apply, but they're not going to be degree granting in any way. The grades that a student would receive from their post-baccalaureate coursework at any 4-year university are going to be combined with their UCR grades. And that's, I think, more particularly important if you're a student who's wanting to do a career change, an academic record enhancer post-bac program. So if you're the type of student who says, hey, I'm getting a degree in biology, my grades are not where they need to be for medical school. I'm going to go to Cal State Fullerton and do an informal post-bac program where I'm going to take additional upper division science courses to raise my grades. Obviously, you're going to want those grades from Cal State Fullerton to combine with those UCR undergraduate grades to increase that undergraduate science GPA. So the courses and the grades that a student were to take from these undergraduate post-bac programs, they will continue to add in with the grades that they've earned from UC Riverside, hopefully with the end goal of raising that cumulative science GPA. And probably more important than that, whether you're looking at a formal post-bac option or an informal post-bac option for a career changer or an academic record enhancer, there's not going to be access to any type of federal financial aid. And we're going to talk about how to pay for these later, but just know that financial aid, whether it be grants or loans, are not an option. For special master's granting post-bac programs, again, those are pretty much designed for pre-med students. These are graduate degrees. And so somebody going on to an SMP program, they are going to be getting a graduate degree. These types of post-bac programs are mostly offered at colleges of osteopathic medicine, which are DO colleges. So most of these special master's programs will be through schools like Western University of Health Sciences, Toro College of Osteopathic Medicine, Midwestern College of Osteopathic Medicine. That's where most of these special master's programs are offered, hopefully with the goal of a student continuing on into the DO program at that same institution. Because these are graduate programs, as you can imagine, there is an application, there are application fees, there are essays and letters that you're going to have to secure. There's definitely going to be an interview process with deadlines. But the thing that makes these master's programs quite a bit different than maybe a formal post-bac program is that there are going to be more rigorous GPA and MCAT requirements or exam requirements. A student going on to a special master's program is really, really going to be on the cusp of having a competitive application to medical school. So they're probably going to be a student who has a science GPA of like a 3.2 or a 3.3, as opposed to a student that might have a 3.0 or a 2.8. A student going into these master's programs definitely is going to be much closer to having a competitive GPA for a professional program, and they will have already successfully completed their admissions test, whether that's the MCAT, the DAT, the OAT, the PCAT. And so I find a lot of students that find these special master's programs on the internet they find these programs to be very appetizing. You're getting a graduate degree. There might be a linkage program with a school of osteopathic medicine. Great options, but they also do have GPA requirements, exam requirements, so a little bit more rigorous admission standards than a formal program or an informal program. And generally are coming with a higher price tag as well because they are graduate level programs. The only difference is that students would be eligible for federal financial aid because it is a degree granting program. A student is awarded a master's degree. But when I say federal financial aid, I'm specifically referencing loans, not free financial aid like grants. And that would have been important to me because I was a Cal Grant, Pell Grant student. So that's why I share that information with you all. Lastly is community colleges, and this comes up quite frequently for financial reasons and accessibility. So there are 114 community colleges in the state of California. There's a community college literally in everybody's backyard. And community colleges are going to be much more affordable options, again, when we're looking at having a lack of financial aid. That might be a more enticing way to go. But generally speaking, if you're a pre-med or pre-dental student, you're not going to be wanting or needing to take your coursework, whether it be your lower division coursework or academic record enhancer coursework. You're not going to be taking those courses at a community college. Students that would be able to take prerequisite coursework or record enhancing coursework at a community college would be students interested in careers outside of medicine or dentistry. So maybe a pre-pharmacy student, a pre-optometry student, a pre-nursing student. That's where we would find it more appropriate to take coursework at a community college. If you're interested in medicine or dentistry, not only will you need to take your prerequisites at a four-year school, unless you were a transfer student, but you would take your prerequisites at a four-year school, as well as any record enhancing coursework at a four-year school. And as you probably are already thinking, that is going to result in a heavy financial burden and is definitely something that every student should be considering prior to moving in that direction, which you all are considering, which is why you're here today joining me for this session. Are there any questions in relation to this comparison chart? Okay.
Amber, I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but there's a question in the chat.
I can't. Can you share what that would be with me?
The student asked, what would be the reason for seeking a formal post-bac, even though there are more requirements for it than an informal post-bac?
That's a great question. I think it's personal preference, partly. It could be geographical location. And so some students are going to want to live back with their primary family in that residence. And there might be a formal program near them, or perhaps they're living in an area where there isn't a formal program. And so an informal option becomes more appealing because of where the student's living geographically. I would say a big difference is the application, so a lot of students don't want to do the application fee, so they go in the informal direction. Why a student picks a formal over an informal, generally I hear from students because of more, I guess, like qualitative or social factors. So in a formal program, there's going to be other students in your cohort with you. So there might be 15 or 25 other students who are in the same boat, so to speak, who are having a shared experience with you. There might be an advisor who's helping you select courses and providing you guidance along your journey. They might offer you standardized exam prep. So again, in those formal programs, they might offer you an MCAT prep class, as well as enrollment assistance. So helping you select courses and getting enrolled in courses, a peer cohort, and then just kind of advising along your journey. Whereas with an informal program, you're really doing it a la carte. You're really doing it on your own. So you'll have to be more self-motivated to decide where do you want to enroll, what kind of courses do you want to enroll in, and then you wouldn't necessarily have peers that are following your same journey, although I'm sure you would meet peers along the same journey through that pathway. So if anybody else has questions, just go ahead and let me know. I did want to move on to just understanding your GPA, at least in relation to academic record enhancer programs. So those academic record enhancers, remember, they're designed to help a student increase their GPA to a level that would be competitive for their professional program. Well, the first step in that journey is really going to be evaluating where your GPA is currently at in relation to where it needs to be. Where it needs to be is a little bit more black and white, and we'll have a table that's going to show you the average GPAs of different professional programs. But we also need to have you evaluate where you are at. We have to get you to calculate that GPA. So professional programs, When they're looking at your academic competitiveness, they really are looking at your science GPA, not necessarily your cumulative GPA. And for like med school, dental school, pharmacy school, optometry school, kind of the science-based health professions programs, their science GPA is going to be lower division math and stat courses, lower division and upper division chemistry, so like gen chem and ochem and biochem, and maybe upper division biochem classes or upper division chemistry classes if your major was chemistry or biochemistry. Generally just lower division physics, like the physics 2 series or the physics 40 series. If you're a physics major and you took upper division physics courses, those would count as well. Most of my students just have the physics 2 series that goes into that GPA. And then all of your biology courses. So that could be lower division biology courses, upper division biology courses, cell molecular developmental biology, genetics, microbiology, molecular biology, neuroscience, anything that would kind of be construed in the life sciences at the lower division level, the upper division level, passing, failing. If you've ever repeated a class, both the first grade that you earned as well as any subsequent grades that you earned, particularly in the sciences, are going to be calculated into this cumulative science GPA. So if you don't know what your science GPA is and you are concerned that it might not be competitive for your program, you might be thinking about doing an academic record enhancer. But again, that science GPA calculation is the first thing that we are going to want you to do. So in the chat, we're sending around a link to this AMCAS Excel document. This is not the end all be all way that you have to calculate your GPA. There's lots and lots of GPA calculator programs out there. This is the one that pre-health advisors use across the country because it is a savable document. It's something that you can add to every quarter, every semester, every summer session. You're able to add coursework for your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior year, senior year, as well as post-bac year. And I know that's not represented on the screen right now, but it is a large Excel document that includes spaces for all of your academic years. It allows you to enter coursework that's both on the quarter system as well as the semester system. So this column H here allows you to check these boxes to allocate, was this a course on the quarter system or semester system? And if you're a transfer student, you know how extremely valuable that is. You're able to use column G to differentiate coursework that is science from coursework that is not science. And that's how we're going to see what your science GPA is. You're able to enter in the units that you earned for a course, the grade you earned for the course, and then the course itself. So again, the course, the grade, the units, science courses are checked here, and then you differentiate quarter to semester coursework in this final column. And that process will help you determine what your current science GPA is at, which again is the first step. The second step is going to be looking at what relation your GPA is to what is competitive nationally. And so for 2018, this is national acceptance data for students across the country for about 9 different professional programs. If you're interested in something not on this slide, we can definitely talk about that at the end, but hopefully this captures most of you. So if you're interested in allopathic medicine, the average student who was accepted earned a 3.6 science GPA, which is just below an A- average, as well as an average of the 85th percentile on the MCAT. So those are pretty high standards. If you're pursuing MD or DO programs, you're definitely gonna want or need to have your science GPA at or above a 3.4. That's not an official minimum, but it would be a pretty logical starting point to demonstrate your ability to successfully complete doctorate level coursework. So we're really going to want to get that science GPA at or above a 3.4 if you're considering MD or DO. The only other thing I want to just highlight your attention to in relation to anything else you might be already looking at on the sheet is something that Charlie, Stephanie, and I hear quite regularly is that students wanted to pursue medicine, MD or DO, but they might feel their grades aren't good enough. And so they'll quote unquote just do PA. And I can conceptually understand why somebody would make that differentiation because, you know, physician assistant may indicate to somebody that it's easier to get into a PA program than to an MD or DO program. But if we look statistically at some metrics, the acceptance rate of PA programs is actually the lowest of any health professions. And their GPA average of students who get accepted is right at the same average as it is for osteopathic medicine programs. Now, a difference with PA is definitely the MCAT. And so students who feel more confident in taking the graduate record exam as opposed to the MCAT, that might be a very logical reason to select PA over MD or DO. But when we look at academic metrics themselves, we're seeing that PA students need to have the same academic performance as an MD or DO student to gain admissions to a PA program. When students are really alternative shopping for a career and they do want to practice medicine, podiatry is a more natural alternative health career when somebody wants to pursue MD or DO programs and they may have a slight academic issue, which is maybe why they're looking at academic record enhancer post-bac programs. Those are absolutely options. But podiatry, a DPM, somebody who practices podiatric medicine, that might be an alternative career where your GPA might be currently competitive for that program, who has a more reasonable MCAT. That might be a strong alternative if you are trying to navigate some academic issues. Any questions on this topic? Okay. So the next question that I usually get is, okay, I'm with you so far, but what about my upward trend? How does that factor into all of this? And yes, an upward trend is definitely important. Your upward trend is how you're showing an admissions committee that you have figured out or have overcome the academic obstacles that were in front of you earlier in your academic career. So yes, we need to see an upward trend, but we also need to see consistent, strong academic performance. So when you're asking questions about upward trend, you need to consider how many quarters or how many years of upward trend you have. If you have a freshman year that was not super great, maybe you struggled with transitioning into college life, which is really normal, but your sophomore year is much better, your junior year and now your senior year have been near perfect, 3 years of strong grades versus 1 year of not so great grades is definitely the upward trend that we ideally would want to see. The problem is more of when a student has a freshman year that's not great, maybe sophomore year really didn't go great, junior year is a little bit better, and now senior year, they're really starting to kind of figure out how to be successful academically. You still should be extremely proud of having an upward trend in your senior year and knowing that you have improved your study skills and your assessment skills to be a more successful student. But at the same time, having one strong year might not be enough to offset or improve from the several years of a weak academic performance. So generally speaking, the amount of time it took to kind of build the academic issue is equal to the amount of time it may take to rectify that academic issue. Then what about holistic admissions, right? So maybe you've heard that admissions committees look holistically at applicants, and the things that you've done outside the classroom as well as your personal story are going to be a big factor in admissions. Yes, absolutely. An admissions committee definitely expects to see that students have been engaged outside the classroom. They definitely expect to see students serving their community, engaging in research, assisting with patient care, maybe working in jobs, having life experiences. That's absolutely part of the process. But when we're talking about GPAs and exam scores specifically, those are academic metrics that indicate your ability to do the work in academic requirements, right? And so when a medical school is looking at your GPA or your science GPA, they're assessing your ability to do the work in med school courses. Can you successfully complete the academic requirements for medical school or dental school? Does your GPA at the undergraduate level indicate that you can do the work at the doctorate level? If that's a yes, then they're going to move on into that exam scores, right? Does your MCAT score, your DAT score, PCAT, OAT, GRE, whatever it may be, does your MCAT score indicate that you can do the work on your board exams? Are you going to be able to get past the USMLE step 1, 2, and 3 based on your MCAT score? And so your resume is definitely going to show them the types of things you've done outside the classroom in terms of building personal characteristics, skill sets, responsibility, integrity, cultural competencies, resiliency, adaptability. There's a lot of value that comes from doing things outside the classroom and building our qualitative skill sets. But when looking at a GPA or an exam score, we're really asking ourselves, can you successfully complete the academic requirements for medical school? And sometimes with a student who's really looking at doing academic record enhancer classes, that might be a no. So if you're at a place where maybe you really do need at least a 3.4 or above to be successfully reviewed by an admissions committee, but you only have a 2.8 GPA, they're probably going to say, no, I don't think that Sally has the academic abilities to successfully complete the coursework required for medical school, and therefore none of the other pieces of your application would be reviewed. So our goal with post-baccalaureate coursework is to get past this initial screening point so that programs will be looking at your exam scores, the things you've done outside the classroom, your personal story and the types of life events you've had to overcome, what letter writers have to say about you, how you present yourself in an interview. All of those things matter. They absolutely do. But first and foremost, what we have to make sure is that we're admitting students to medical school who can graduate from medical school. So that's just the first step of the process. Any questions here? Okay. So the next question I often get is, so how do I pay for these classes? Where does this money magically come from? Again, unfortunately, most post-bac options do not provide financial aid. Federal financial aid is generally only available when a student is in a degree-seeking program. Free federal financial aid like grants. Again, I was a Cal Grant, Pell Grant recipient to pay for my undergraduate degree. So if that's yourself as well, that type of free money is generally only available for your first undergraduate degree. So once you get that BA or that BS degree from UC Riverside, generally speaking, you're not going to have any kind of access to Pell Grants or Cal Grants. So if you do those master's programs, you would take out loans to pay for your education. If you're going on to your doctorate or your master's level health profession, you'll be taking out loans to pay for that. If you're doing post-baccalaureate coursework, again, as that bridge or that conduit to raise your GPA or complete your prerequisite coursework, you're most likely going to have to identify an alternative funding source to finance your own educational journey. I've seen students use credit cards. Some have racked up quite substantial credit card debt. They may have savings accounts. They may have taken out private loans from Wells Fargo or Chase or B of A. They may work part-time or full-time to help pay for their coursework, or perhaps they have family or community support to help finance their education. None of that is probably the most ideal way to pay for continuing education, but knowing that there's not going to be a lack, or I'm sorry, there will be a lack of financial aid options. And so there are a lot of students who decide not to pursue post-bac coursework because of financial restrictions. So it's just something to kind of take into consideration is how much will these programs cost you? Where will this money come from? How will you pay for these programs? Oops, sorry. The last question that I often get from students is like, okay, that was a lot. So are there other options? I'm now thinking maybe doing post-bac programs. Maybe you're even more committed. Some of you might be thinking, I'm not really sure now. Absolutely, there are different options. There are over 120 different health careers. There are 9 that are at the doctorate level. Those 9 programs are definitely going to be using heavier science-based curriculum to quote unquote help people. Medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, podiatry, veterinary medicine, optometry, chiropractics. Those are going to be doctorate level programs that are very heavy science based in terms of prerequisites as well as clinical practice. But there are also health professions programs that are more humanities or social science focused that work with patients in a more professionally intimate way, who spend maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour with each patient in a more qualitative manner. Perhaps they're serving as a therapist, a social worker, a speech language pathologist, an occupational therapist, a public health provider. There are a lot of ways to help people using both science, humanities, and social sciences in varying ways and varying levels. And so explore, which I know during COVID is a difficult thing to do, but this is where gaining bedside experience with patients is going to be really helpful for you to identify what is helping somebody really mean to you. Does that mean diagnosing and treating patients and writing prescriptions? And if that's the case, then medicine would be a great career. But some people really start to realize that helping people means being a therapist or being a social worker or being an occupational therapist and helping patients navigate their lived experiences and navigate cultural, religious, societal barriers in a way that doesn't really lend itself to what a physician, a nurse, or a PA do. So gain that clinical experience, do job shadowing, talk to providers, get jobs, really start to explore and confirm what helping somebody means to you and what the right way to help somebody is going to look like for your professional career. As you can tell, these post-bac conversations are pretty complex. There's a lot of really personal questions that might come up, like I have C- I have to retake, or I have course repeats. I'm a transfer student. I've attended coursework internationally. So some of these conversations might be needed to have directly with myself or Charlie or Stephanie or one of our 16 ambassadors. So you are going to be able to follow up with an individual advisor if you have a more complex situation that you would like to discuss. I just want to highlight on a final note that taking coursework at any public or private college is absolutely accessible. Accessibility of post-baccalaureate coursework is not an issue. You can go to any college through their Open University Extension Center or extended studies and continue to take coursework. You just won't be able to take coursework with the benefit of federal financial aid. That's the difference of where post-bacs can become difficult to navigate. To put it into context for you, at a UC school or a CSU school, they're generally about $350 per unit to take a course, which means you're paying about $1,400 per class. So that can add up really quickly if you have a significant academic issue to overcome. 1 year of post-bac coursework at that price would cost about $15,000. 2 years, $30,000, 3 years, $45,000. And so if you're needing 2 or 3 years of post-bac coursework to repair your GPA, you definitely have to consider whether or not that investment is realistic for you, as well as whether or not that investment is worth it to you. And that's a very individualized decision for you to make. We have some additional resources here that I'll pull up in just a second, but I wanted to end with our contact information. So the Health Professions Advising Center at HPAC, that's our phone number, 951-888-1290, our website, our email, as well as our social media presence. So we have an email listserv, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we have our YouTube channel, and of course we're doing all of our appointments and digital content via Zoom while we remain virtual. In terms of additional resources, I know some of this was coming through on the chat, but I just wanted to show you all. This is the AAMC, the American Association of Medical Colleges, their post-baccalaureate pre-med database. So there's 280 of these formal post-bac programs in the US. And over here under specialty focus is where you can search for career changers versus academic record enhancers. So if you look at academic record enhancers, there's 218 across the country. And if you look by state, that will pull up the 18 that are in California. So this is going to be the most robust database of post-bac programs. There's also going to be a separate database for the UC, the University of California post-bac program. So there's going to be, I think, 6 that operate through the consortium application. This is going to be the list of those the special master's programs or the master's in medical science post-bac programs. Again, these are going to be at colleges of osteopathic medicine. That's where you're generally going to see these master's programs that do have more rigorous admission standards. So you definitely have to make sure that GPA and exam score wise, these would be realistic programs to be applying to. And then lastly, we just shared some additional reading material for you, again, from the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, looking at post-bac database, whether you're considering a post-bac, is it right for you? There's a lot of information on here, some dense reading for you all in terms of post-bac programs and coursework. And then the national association that I'm a part of for NAHP, this is the National Association for Advisors of Health Professions. There's a lot of post-bac blogs and podcasts and different articles that can be, again, more reading material for you all that we will send around in the chat. So with all of that taken care of, I'm going to turn it over to our question and answer session.